Patriotic Ideals, Episode 9. Welcome, fellow patriots. My name is Author Larry, and my channel is Patriotic Ideals. This is a political channel in which I discuss the challenges facing our great nation and offer some solutions that I consider appropriate. If you like this content, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. It is absolutely free and it will help grow my channel. Today we're going to talk about worldwide sovereign debt. My friends, it mystifies me to watch investment portfolio managers run to hide investment money in government bonds when they see the stock market in decline. Surely, balance sheets of most corporations, even some with too much debt, are in better shape than the balance sheets of most governments. Every year it occurs to me that government bonds become less and less likely to ever be paid back. Nevertheless, interest rates remain unrealistically low. How deep in debt are governments on planet Earth? This subject is covered in one of the chapters of my recently released book titled Love Letters to America, which contains a partial list of the debt of nations as of 2012. That was the latest data available at that time. Updated research is now available, which shows the debt comparisons with gross domestic product estimated for 2024 by the International Monetary Fund for some of the most indebted nations. With the exception of Germany, which appears to have reduced its debt burden as it relates to GDP, all of the other countries shown have increased debt burdens. These are all Western nations with large, prosperous economies which, if they were to fall into decline, would cause a dark ages worse than what the planet suffered through after the collapse of the Roman Empire. I believe I read that in recent years, Greece, Italy, and Portugal were bailed out by the European Union. Most Americans already know how high the United States debt has climbed and that it substantially exceeds gross domestic product. Our government also treats the money in Social Security and Medicare like the funds belong to the government. No one knows how many Americans and non-American citizens receive checks from Social Security who never paid a nickel into the system. The people understand that our government is supposed to be holding that money for retirees who paid it into the system to be held for retirement years. We do not know, however, if the $35 trillion of the United States government debt includes what our government owes us for retirement benefits also. And no one who did not pay into the system should be receiving benefits. Those funds are owed by the government to workers who paid many years into Social Security and Medicare for the purpose of having retirement benefits available to them after their working years. What has caused the United States and other countries to become so deep in debt? What is the likelihood that the United States or any of the other countries will begin to reduce their debt burdens anytime soon? It is not just unlikely, it is becoming impossible. While the economy of the United States and its gross domestic product appear higher today than they were 50 to 70 years ago due to inflation in the numbers, we have been exporting practically all of our production and jobs overseas since the 1970s. The economy of the United States is actually much smaller today than it was many years ago. The percentage of the population that had a job in the 1960s was about 2/3. Today it is less than half. Labor force participation is way down. In the meantime, the government has grown much larger, not only in numbers of workers, but in payroll and purpose also. If the size and cost of government has grown so large that it can no longer be supported by taxation from the local economy, which has actually grown much smaller, how will the government ever be able to stop borrowing? The budget of the present administration was about $3 trillion more than the taxes to be collected. It was also scheduled to borrow and spend $2 trillion over budget each year for the next 3 years. If we add the $6 trillion that was borrowed during the pandemic to the deficits of this administration, we will understand how we got to $35 trillion in debt. Not only the United States, but also most other Western nations have embarked on a policy in which it no longer matters to them how much they borrow, and it appears to me that none of them have any intention of ever paying any of it back. In my first book titled Past, Present, and Future of Planet Earth, I introduced several new economic principles that I believe are needed to save our planet from total economic collapse. The first relates to the size of government. A government can never be allowed to increase to a size that cannot be supported by its local economy. Soon you are using tax money to pay interest on the debt, and there is no money to provide for the needs of the people. We are even borrowing to pay government employees and the retirements of former government employees. My book also brings up a new definition for trade deficits. A trade deficit is the transfer of wealth from the middle class of our nation to the middle classes of other countries which have favorable trade balances with us. The United States has had substantial trade deficits since the 1970s, and they have gotten much worse over the years and total many trillions of dollars. What it means is that we have been exporting all of our manufacturing jobs overseas, resulting in a very substantial reduction in our private economy. Meanwhile, our government keeps growing in size and cost. How long will countries to be able to borrow more and more to support their activities and avoid default on their debt? There are a number of changes taking place today which will eventually bring the planet back to reality. Consider the following. Socialized economies have continued to make the rich richer and everybody else poorer. Sentiment is growing to tax the rich at higher rates. If the rich have less money, they will not be able to buy as many government bonds. Federal Reserve banks flooded the local economies with capital, which the government stepped in and borrowed. Now resulting inflation has caused Federal Reserve banks to embark on a policy of reducing available capital and raising rates to fight inflation. This will result in less capital available to purchase government debt. Federal Reserve policy often results in recession, at which time less money is available to buy government debt. For many years, our government seems to have supported the export of jobs to foreign countries, which tends to result in a smaller local economy and which reduces availability of capital for purchase of government debt. What do we need to do to bring common sense back to government policy and restore economic health? Consider the following. Government at all levels must be reduced in size, which will result in less necessity to borrow and increase debt. Government debt can only be justified to fund infrastructure. Even then, a plan must be made to pay it back so that it will be available again at a later date to rebuild infrastructure or create new infrastructure as needed. It is not a question of if, but when will governments be forced to default on their debt because of lack of availability of additional capital? Who will suffer? Where will the government get the money to support the welfare programs that it borrows to support today? The poor will suffer the most. If you are working and have an IRA or 401k, it is likely 40% invested in various government bond programs. Default will hurt all American workers. It is normally the wealthy who provide most of the capital for rebuilding our domestic economy that provides jobs for Americans. We have to start diverting more capital away from government and into our domestic economy. We have not lost the battle to save the planet yet, but we are a long way down the road to economic devastation. The United States and all of the Western nations where capitalism still has a foothold must adopt conservative economic principles and rebuild their local economies. At the same time, we must stop borrowing to prop up failing economies as we are doing today. We need to think about the consequences. It is my belief, and that of many others, that the default of worldwide government debt will result in worldwide economic collapse and many years of dark ages. No one country will survive it, and it could result in conflict and war. This subject is covered in my latest book, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, titled Love Letters to America. In this book, I have written 33 love letters to America to identify many of our nation's problems and offer some solutions. If you like this content, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Membership is absolutely free and will help grow my channel. Your comments are always welcome, and I will respond to all that I can. Look for weekly episodes. My next episode will be about the dangers of cryptocurrencies. Please tune in. This is author Larry signing off for Patriotic Ideals. Really hope to see you again next week.